Hello, everyone. Welcome to Comic Geek Out 2021. Today will be from 1 to 4 p.m. at the Yankee Clipper branch, which is at 2025 Leonard Street, Northeast. Within that time frame, we'll have an artist alley that you can go and browse creations from our local creatives in Grand Rapids and purchase things from them. There will be free crafts, free comics and books for you to grab, as well as a cosplay contest for those that want to cosplay and win some prizes. And later, after this video ends, there will also be an Animal Crossing stream address tour. So make sure that you tune in again after this video ends. And remember, we'll be at the Yankee Clipper branch from 1 to 4 p.m. today. Make sure to check us out. There's going to be a lot of pretty cool free goodies and stuff, and snacks. Snacks are always welcome. All right. Without further ado, I'm here today with Mariah McCourt. She is a wonderful writer and editor of highly acclaimed titles like True Blood, All Together Now. I'm a super big fan of True Blood. I love True Blood. Yes, it was like my series that got me through high school.
Oh,
So
well,
it's
nice.
HBO.
Yeah, I know.
So I shouldn't have been watching that at that age.
It's okay.
It was amazing anyways.
Mm-hmm.
Ash and Thorn and Illyria Haunted and more. Yeah, so Mariah, what can you tell us about yourself?
Well, I've been editing and writing comics for about 20 years now, and I started at Vertigo, which sadly no longer exists, but was the sort of weird imprint of DC Comics. And so I got my start in comics on the weird stuff, on horror titles and thrillers and all kinds of epic, high fantasy, strange concept kind of stuff. So my background in comics is a little different, I think, sometimes than a lot of other people who work in the more sort of well-known superhero stuff.
Yeah, I've read some of the stuff that you worked on. We actually have a couple at the library, so guys, feel free to check it out. And if you see that it's not available, like it got lost or something, let us know. We'll try to get it in our catalog as soon as possible. But yeah, of course, my favorite being the True Blood series. It's a nice addition to the TV series. It was great that Suki was like one of I will not spoil it for anyone that's not seen the show yet, but it's been a while.
Yeah, it's been long enough, I think.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
But Suki was like my favorite character ever, since it was like the first concept of having like a fae thing introduced into a dark horror.
Yeah, nice to have fairies sort of introduced, because like fairies actually are, and fairy tales are usually really horrifying and dark. So having that kind of woven into more classically, I think, assumed horror genre stuff was well done. Yeah.
Yeah, it was really, really well written. So seems like you've worked on a lot of these things. Like, how long have you working on this? You mentioned it was how many years?
Yeah, just at 20 years now. So I was an intern at Vertigo first for a year while I was in art school. I went to the School of Visual Arts, and I interned in editorial for a year. And then after I graduated, I got hired as an assistant editor. So yeah, I got my start pretty young.
That's amazing.
Yep.
I recently started getting into writing, not doing such a great job at it because I get distracted very easily.
That's all writers, don't worry. That's not just
yeah. So you mentioned college education. Well, did you need any sort of college education to start practicing or being an artist or writer?
Yeah, well, need is such a funny word for it, because I think a lot of things about college are really important. I think a lot of the things that just being on your own, exposed to new ideas. There are a lot of different academic things, I think, that are important to the arts. And I was lucky because School of Visual Arts combined those things together. So we had like NYU professors teaching us history and writing and, other kinds of stuff. So we had really good, along with our art degree. And in terms of art, for me, it was great, and I loved the atmosphere. I don't necessarily think it's right for everybody. With drawing and art, I mean, there are so many different ways now, especially because this is like a million years ago when I went, that you can study stuff through community colleges or
Right.
private art school types. There's so many different ways of doing that now. And really, when it comes down to it with art and anything, it's less about the concept of talent than it is about practicing and doing it and keeping at it. I think one of the things that was important to me in art school was getting to do that stuff every day and learning techniques and how to manage my time and figure those kinds of things out. So I think I think college matters, but I think what kind of education you're getting and what you're pursuing and how those things influence like the intersectional concepts, I think that's the most important thing. And like I said, there are a lot of ways to get that experience now that aren't necessarily the same traditional ways that we've been taught.
Yeah, I agree. There's a lot of different, like even online tutorials and
Mm-hmm.
videos.
Yep.
For example, learning spaces, like it used to be
Yeah.
called Linda, but now it's LinkedIn. It's part of LinkedIn.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yep.
and like there's a lot of other things and programs online that you can just take for free
Yeah.
online.
Comics Experience is run by a friend of mine, and that's full of great classes with professionals at all different levels and things. And I think you can I mean, they can really help sort of take a person through the whole process and learn a lot about even the editorial side of things, which I think is often a little bit of a mystery. So yeah, there's a lot of really great information out there now, so that, depending on what your goals are and what you want to do with any of those things, it doesn't have to be in quite the same way we've been sort of told we have to do that kind of stuff. And art education can be very formal, and for some people that's great, and for other people it's not. So it sort of depends on
Correct.
what your needs are too, I think. So
Mhm.
yeah, I think there's just a lot of more opportunity now to sort of try what you want to do.
Yeah, I think it just enhances well what you
Yeah.
have,
Mhm.
the natural talent that you have, plus all of the practice that you put into it. I
Mhm.
think like just college education, it's great and also enhances, but it's not like a must
Yeah,
have.
I think so, because I think a lot of, I mean, for instance, there might be classes now in editing comics. I don't know, but when I was starting, there was no such thing. So, and it's a very particular medium, so it's something that you kind of learn it as you do it, because there's certain things about the storytelling and different kinds of stuff. It helped that I had an art background. I think for me, but like script writing and stuff was something I learned by editing them. It wasn't like I didn't take any classes in script writing or anything like that. So that kind of came about through editing stuff first. So yeah, I mean, everybody comes at it differently too. So it's kind of a comics. I've met people from so many different backgrounds with so many different education and different, like, from super academic PhD to, like, they tried some community college stuff to here and there, and different kinds of skill sets and things come into it. So it's all applicable to storytelling. So I think,
Correct.
yeah, I tend to think it's kind of however you come to it is a good thing.
Correct. Yeah, I think like storytelling, and it's like the base of everything.
Yeah, I agree.
It's where you go from and branch out to
Mhm.
different things. Um, so now that we're talking about like I mentioned storytelling, my favorite mediums of storytelling are of course comics,
Mhm.
graphic novels, manga, TV series, anime, you name it.
Yep.
Which is like, do you have like a favorite comic, maybe a graphic novel or a manga of all time?
Sure. Well, I mean, I have lots of stuff that I just love, and it's always kind of weird when you've worked on them, because then you're like, I feel weird being like, I edited this book, but it's a favorite. But like one of my still all-time favorites is the comic Lucifer that I got to work on with Mike Carey and Peter Gross. I was still, from a collaborative standpoint, still one of my favorite working experiences, because they're just lovely people. And then the comic itself did so many unusual, different, weird things, that it was like, yeah, it was just always something different was happening. And Mike is such a astute storyteller, so that was just a kind of an amazing experience to kind of start on. Like, I started working with that kind of stuff. At the moment, like, a lot of the comics that are my favorite are online. So like, I am a huge Lore Olympus fan, from the webtoon stuff, and that just like, ugh, it just kills me every week. So that's for right now, that I would say that's probably my favorite, but there's so many amazing comics out, like I can't keep up. You know,
Yeah.
there's two books that I just worked on, and again, because I was the editor, I feel a little guilty, but like they're incredible works. One of them is called Shadow Life. Both these books came out from First Second, and they just came out recently, and that was Hiromi Goto and Anju, and it's about an older woman who traps death in her vacuum cleaner, and the
What? That sounds
very strange
amazing.
stuff that happens alongside that. It's a fantastic book. It's a black and white, and it's an adult graphic novel, like it's for an older audience, but it's yeah, it's pretty amazing. And then the other book that I edited for them that was really great is called Dungeon Critters, and that's a middle grade fantasy book with these sort of animal, kind of D&D-ish role-playing type characters. It's a lot of fun and funny stuff about the genre and games general and characters and stuff, and that's another one I really enjoyed working on. So I'm lucky I get to work on a lot of really different kinds of projects, so no two are really exactly the same. So that's, I feel really like yay whenever I get to see that kind of stuff in my inbox.
That must feel interesting. Like you work on some of the titles that are like your all-time favorites, and you
Yep.
know, like once you get like the finished product, and you know that you worked on it so hard, and you helped to develop certain things that when you look at it at the end product, you go like, I did this. How does
Yeah.
it feel?
Well, it's funny with editing, you have to make sure that you're like you're what you're really doing is helping the creator tell their story. So it's a lot of it is about like not you inserting yourself into their stuff, but just making sure it gets done the way it should be and helping them with their story if they're stuck, or if you see things that you think, I'm not sure that's actually what you wanted to do. So it's always nice because like you have to take a step back for a while from it. Like usually you need a couple weeks before you can read it with any like objectivity at all. But yes, it is really nice to get to see things later. You're like, oh yeah, that's right, I worked on that after all the crazy deadline stuff and all these other things. It turned out it works. That's a very nice feeling. Yeah.
That's great. I need to check out Lucifer. I've not it by any chance not related to the TV series, correct?
Oh yes, yes.
It
It
is?
is loosely. The
Loosely.
there are a lot of nods to that particular comic, but it's a procedural sort of mystery solving kind of thing, the show. But it's super fun, and tonally it's got a lot of stuff in it that definitely reminded me of Mike and Peter's stuff. So it's funny to watch as somebody that stuff. And they gave little nods to Mike and Peter in the show, which I caught, which I'm sure other people who read the comics would have,
Oh my, I
little
have
Easter egg type
homework to
stuff.
do. I have homework to do this weekend then.
Yeah. Yeah, I enjoy the show a lot. It's not the comic, but that's fine. You wouldn't have been able to do that, I don't think, adapting that to TV. I think even with today's very savvy audiences, I still think you'd have a hard time getting that across
Correct,
to
yeah.
people. Yeah.
And also the time constraints from, like
Mhm.
like for example, either Netflix or whoever's trying to
Yeah.
publish these episodes, they want so much to put in one
Yeah, and it's a lot.
episode.
The mythology behind it is not just the Lucifer mythos, but you have the whole Sandman mythos, which is also attached to it. So there's a lot of stuff like that that would have been, I think, really difficult if you were trying to do like a straight adaptation of it. So I think, and also I think that it's also slightly based, at least I think, on some of the newer stuff that was done too. So from it was a bunch of years ago now, so newer is relative, but just some things like that. But yeah, I think the main character, the guy who plays Lucifer, is really great. So
Yeah, he's amazing.
mm,
Uh so well, we could call him sort of like a superhero type of character. I mean, not really, but yeah. Everyone is a superhero in their own way. I would always say. There's always something humanly that kind
oh
of
yeah.
ties you into helping
Yeah, I
someone
mean,
or
superheroes are superhuman, so I feel like there's a
correct.
fairly wide breadth of interpretations for that personally. I
Correct.
think, there's some specific genre stuff for superheroes and things, but I think how people interpret the idea of a superhero can be pretty broad. Well, it's funny too, because since I come from the different sort of background in comics, like I didn't start with superhero stuff. So for me, I was sort of a late getting into it kind of thing. And this will make some people in my industry cranky. A lot of them, it comes from the films. So for me, a lot of it comes from like the Marvel films, which I've really enjoyed because they're so outside the kinds of comics
Yes.
that I've done. So I really enjoy them for that because I'm able to just kind of get lost in that, and I don't have any expectations or anything from it, which is different than it would be if somebody was like, I know they're going to be adapting things like Sandman and other stuff soon, and those are things where I have much more of a
Yeah.
personal connection to it, So
I think
yeah,
like
that's interesting.
if they come up like and say straight out to the fans, like, hey, I think Marvel might have mentioned this in the past that they don't want to replicate exactly how everything went in the
Yeah.
comics because it's like a different type of
Yeah, and you
branch.
wouldn't be able to. I mean, there's certain things from each medium that work in that medium and don't work. Just like you can't just put it on screen. That happens a lot in comics because it's a visual storytelling medium. So a lot of work that I do is consulting work with people who want to write comics or a lot of adapted screenplay stuff. And a major misconception that you get from people is like, well, it's two visual storytelling mediums, so they're basically the same. And I'm like, they really aren't. The pacing is very, very different.
Yes.
And certain things that you can do in a comic, you cannot do in a film. It's the same thing with, there's things you can do with prose that you can't do in a comic, and all that other kind of stuff. So each medium has its own benefits and limitations. So I think it's always best to write your original or create your original in the best medium for it, and then adaptations kind of after that always have to make adjustments because there's just certain things you can't do the exact same way, or the story will be weird. Like it just won't
Yes.
be compelling to watch in the same way. So that's one of the things I think the Marvel films have done really well. They've taken the core of characters
Mhm.
and the core concepts and a lot of the core story stuff, but they have really then turned and made it into a film world that works. And they've done something like, I don't even know how they've accomplished all of that. Like just small writer room stuff that I've done is complicated enough. I don't know how they've done decade plus a bajillion films. Like it's pretty impressive an accomplishment.
Yeah, it is. And the timeline that they have for upcoming years too, it's
Yeah.
quite impressive. So we talk about a little bit about the what it means to be a hero, and then we jump to Marvel. Now it doesn't have to be any Marvel related superhero, but
Mhm.
when we think about superhero,
Yeah.
what would be like your favorite that's my role model
Mm.
superhero type of thing?
Um, this is funny. I wouldn't have said this 10 years ago, but now I would say this. I would say that Captain America, and that's putting aside weird patriotism stuff. Like that's
Interesting.
not really what I find interesting. What I find compelling about the character and Steve Rogers, but then now, with Samuel Wilson and stuff, I think it's what I find so compelling is decent people working within a complicated, often indecent world and still trying to do their best. They still have hope. They understand that things are complicated. They understand that things are not perfect. They understand that things are even way beyond not perfect, but they still do their best. And it's a bit idealized, it's definitely there's a bit of that. I felt like Falcon and Winter Soldier was definitely addressing some of those things that
Yes.
Steve, as much as I love the character, did have a naivete about him about certain kinds of things. It's just not the kind of person that he was, whereas the world works differently.
Mm-hmm.
But that's what I found most compelling was that he's such a decent person and he's trying to navigate his own time and then another time and then all this kind of stuff. And you make decisions and there are consequences and you have to keep dealing with them. And he never loses his ability to be decent, which I think is the thing for me that has been so important over the last decade, is that being a decent person, even when the situations are not, or when it's hard, is the most important thing, is trying to maintain your sense of decency to others and to own your mistakes and to learn from them and to keep going. I think that's,
Yeah,
for me, that's the most compelling thing.
that's pretty cool that you mentioned all that, because also being a leader is not an easy thing. You
No,
have
not
to
at all.
make choices and keep a
Yeah.
balance, and it's tough. I can see he's one of my favorite superheroes, but I would not say like he's like my top first superhero. I have a struggle with superheroes. I have a lot of favorite superheroes, but well, this one doesn't really go into the superhero category. But also fits into superhero. He fits in everywhere. It's Deadpool. Deadpool fits
Oh,
everywhere.
yes.
he,
Yep.
he fits anywhere.
Superhero, anti-hero,
Yeah,
cranky man about
villain.
town. Yeah, yeah, of course. Yeah.
So Deadpool is usually my top number one, but right there with Deadpool is Weekend from the Young Avengers.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Weekend, he's coming coming of age story, and
Yeah,
his
what a
love
lovely thing they've
interest.
done there with those characters. Yeah.
Yeah, with Hulkling and him,
Yeah.
and being like the first gay teenage
Yeah, that's one of the
Avenger.
sweetest love stories I have ever seen. It's done
It's amazing.
so well. And there's so much heart to it too. Like I know it's a love story, but it also just has this really sweet component to it, which is really nice. I mean, superheroes are kind of known for not having healthy relationships.
Right?
So it's super nice to see a healthy relationship. And for it to be gay teenagers is an extra like yay, because we could really use more representation for that too. I
Yes,
think that's
definitely.
yeah.
Yeah, that's like right there with Deadpool. He's like my number one. They're like
Yeah.
usually fighting constantly for that spot. So now this is a weird question. But I'm sure like a lot of folks that are your fans and have read your works and stuff. If you were a superhero,
Hmm.
which superpower would you like to have?
I was giving this one a lot of thought because like there's the easy ones like flight, which seems cool, or like, that kind of thing. But I don't know. I was actually thinking that I was thinking more of and I'm trying to think of a character who has this, but I'm not sure. Anyway, something driven by empathy. I think an empathy driven sort of superpower, as in helping other people have empathy and understanding one another. Um, that's something I would like as a superpower. Helping people
Yeah,
connect and understand one another and find common ground would be, I think, something that if I had got to choose, that's something that I would
I
want.
think Martian from DC has something
Yeah,
like
yeah.
that.
I'm sure somebody does. This is where I show my ignorance on superheroes. I'm sure someone does.
Yeah,
But yeah, I guess that's kind of where I've been coming from on it lately. Because there's like the cool ones, and I'm like, and yeah, I mean, flight would be neat, but it wouldn't really like help anybody but me. So I feel
yeah,
like if you're gonna have like a superpower, I want it to be a little more meaningful and have something about it that's helping to connect other people.
correct. That's lovely. Yeah, now you're making me rethink my superpower. Um, but yeah, I think so too. I mean, in the end, a superhero, that's like your thing. You go want to like empathize and help those that are in need and whatnot. So it makes sense to have some power that revolves around that.
Yeah, there was
Um,
this is gonna sound really weird, but there's a show that, and anybody who just like follows me on Twitter knows this, a huge Farscape fan. And there's a group of people in the last sort of season and then into the final film sort of that wrapped everything up. And that's kind of what they do, is they help groups that have conflict find common ground and empathize with each other. They don't control anybody's emotions. They just kind of dial down the animosity, and it led them to being a people who are able to navigate some pretty huge things. There's still problems. It's not like they fixed everything, but yeah, that was just something that when I saw it, I thought, oh boy, that would be something that it wouldn't just be about you. It's about connecting a lot of other people, and that feels like a superpower as opposed to just like it's kind of like being able to punch people really hard. See, that's my child there getting cranky. Being able to punch people really hard, like to me, is just kind of like, like I would prefer never to do that. So it's like for me, that would be a horrible superpower to have. Yeah, so that's my very, very mom answer on that one.
that's amazing. I think for myself would be maybe some sort of magic or alteration, similar to Weekend, like cosmic
Hmm.
magic alteration, where maybe I could just come up with a new superpower every
Yeah.
once in a while, and that I
Just to
need
what you need,
at that
yeah.
time. Yeah. So now to spice things up, right? You talk about your superhero power, right? What
Mhm.
about a villain?
So I always end up with not the same villain in my work, but often similar villains with that come from similar motivations, I find. And it's just something I'm always sort of exploring in different ways. But I think that the people in villainy that I find most upsetting is people who just sort of want to dominate and have power over others all the time, and her never seem to be satisfied with that. That comes out in a lot of different ways depending on like genre that you're writing and things like that. But that I don't understand it, the compulsion to be that way, to sort of oppress and dominate and force people to your will, kind of a thing. So that always ends up being the villains that I tend to explore. So yes, that would probably be what I would end up. The other thing that ends up happening an awful lot is they end up being usually monsters who eat things, like universes. For some reason, that comes up a lot for me
Oh,
too. I find that distressing. So
yeah, they're like world
toothy
ending
things that
apocalyptic.
eat a lot, that are like toothy things they're just consuming constantly. I'm like, that's creepy. I think that's probably why zombies freak me out more than any other like thing. I know it's like the weirdest thing, but like they really truly freak me out because of that. I'm like, all they do is just like devour things. They don't have any other purpose. I'm like,
Yeah.
freaks me out. Yeah.
So some sort of like Lovecraftian,
Oh
like
yeah, I mean Lovecraftian stuff, well, like these big cosmic things just like about the
cool.
world. Yeah. I mean Ash and Thorn 100% is about
Yeah.
that kind of stuff big time. So yeah, it comes up though. People, and it comes up a lot in work of fiction anyway. With
Mhm.
horror, it's obviously pretty common. But you get it in superhero stuff. Those the big villains of things are often these like power and dominating in some way. It takes different forms and it's, different kinds of characters, but that sense of just being and using that power in a way that's really only for selfish gain, I think. That's always
Yeah.
sort of the thing for me that's,
Yeah, I
evil.
think some villains fall into the villain archetype or stereotype of, oh, I'm the evil bad guy. I bash people and do bad things. But sometimes once in a while there's like a villain that has really good character development and makes you question like, is this actually a villain, or is he does he have his own reason for doing this? And like I like villains that, have that
Oh yeah.
villain development well set, and
Yeah.
it's just not like your stereotype villain usually.
I like him too. I do like the sort of complicated villains. I do sometimes just like monsters that are just bad. Sometimes I like things that are just like not subtle, which was really because of Ahoy, who I worked with on Ashland Thorn. They're all about sort of like embracing tropes and being very like honest about the stuff that you're doing. So I did enjoy having just a bad dude who's just bad, like just
Yeah.
I'm like, nope, there is nothing redeeming here. There's no nuance. There's no like backstory that's going to justify this. He's just awful. He just likes to eat stuff. That's it. Um,
Yeah.
that's all that's going on in the story, but just that like his motivations are fairly like clear cut and not particularly layered. We'll put it that way.
Correct. Yeah.
But most of the time, yeah, I prefer characters that have kind of degrees and what's going on. And even if I don't agree with them and I can't even sympathize with them, where at least I understand what it is. It depends on what they're doing. Obviously, there's some things where I'm just like, nope, that's just terrible.
Right.
But some stuff, it is more interesting to have a fully realized character that way.
Yeah, I've seen some character illustrations on your website
Hmm.
that I think we might actually put them on our website or link on the video on Facebook, the web address so that folks can see. And some of your artwork is really, really cool. Like there's a lot of creatures meshing and humans and dark elements to it.
Mhm.
Where do you draw that inspiration from?
Um, a lot of different things. A lot of stuff is like weird dreams. I have very strange lucid dreams. So there's lots of weird stuff from that. I'm inspired a lot by nature though too. Like a lot of the like tentacly people. I mean, I just think octopi are neat. So that just kind of
Yes.
comes into those things. Some of it's, artists that I've really loved, like Edward Gorey was a big influence when I was younger. And there's a ton of fantasy art, like Brian Froud's work with fairy stuff and things like that. Jim Henson's work actually on things like Labyrinth and Dark Crystal and that kind of stuff was always really influential too. I think a lot of it's just kind of like I'll sit down, just start drawing something, and it just kind of turns into something weird. I like to do a lot of art that's yeah, like I like to do a lot of art that's not really like planned out.
Right.
Because it's just me. So it's doing it. It's just kind of like I feel like a monster cupcake today, and then tomorrow it's a tentacle hair person. Like it's just sort of whatever I'm sort of in the mood for. So it's that, it's just a lot of like if I'm having a crummy day, scribbling out some silly looking hedgehogs is therapeutic and makes me feel better. Stuff like that. And then also because I have a 6-year-old now, sometimes it's just like she'll just come up with some weird thing and I'm like, I am definitely going to draw that because I have no idea what that is. Sounds amazing. Anytime a kid comes up with something, it's like 1,000 times better than anything you could. So I try to keep notes of like the weird things
That's
that she
awesome.
does, like
Yeah.
the creatures she comes up with, because I'm just like, she likes to sculpt things in clay a lot.
Oh,
And she'll explain it to me and I'm just like, that's fantastic. I don't know where your brain's like amazing. So that's where a lot of that kind of stuff comes from. Yeah.
what's like if you show her like your art and stuff that came from her like idea or her work,
A
and
lot
you
of
actually show her,
hedgehogs stuff.
really?
Yeah, funnily enough. Well, I started telling her just like random hedgehog stories to help her go to sleep at night. And then they turned into like an actual little character that I drew for her. And then there's a couple other ones. She's got like a witch one
Oh.
because she wanted to be a witch, and she's been a witch a bunch of times for Halloween. She just really likes witches. So I've just written like a bunch of little funny stories about those because most of them just were like off the cuff, just like blah blah blah. And right now she's really into dinosaurs. So there's a lot of like dinosaur things being made, and telling me random dinosaur facts that I'm like, I don't know any of that. That sounds amazing. Um, yeah, a lot of stuff like that. Like, and she likes me to draw certain things for her. And then other stuff, she's like, no, mom, I'm going to do that. You don't do it right. Fair enough. So yeah, she's a really creative kid too. So she's always telling little stories and coming up with scenarios and stuff too.
That is great. So from drawing and writing and editing, what type of work as a creative do you enjoy the most?
I don't think I can really pick one because they all like I love to do all of them, and they're all they take different skill sets. I mean, they're all, except like maybe drawing by myself, they're all collaborative to some degree, which is one of the things I really love about editing, is that you get to sort of help somebody tell a story, and the whole process of writer and artist and kind of connecting people up and stuff is really rewarding. But so is writing and art. It all just sort of takes different skills, I guess, and just time and different stuff. So like kind of what you're in the mood for. So yeah, like I don't know if I could pick a favorite. Like I just like storytelling. So like if I could say I just love storytelling. So however that happens, whether it's editing or telling, like writing it, or like drawing something that's got like a thing, that's pretty much, I'm happy. That's pretty much all it takes. Yeah.
That's amazing. That's what like we talked earlier, storytelling is like the base of everything. You can do drawing with storytelling, you can do editing on a story, you can do writing.
A image can tell the whole story.
Correct.
Or like a 500-page script. Like it's sort of, there's just all these different ways of doing it. So yeah, any element of that I get to be part of, I'm pretty happy.
Yeah. So I think this question might have been answered earlier that I have here is from projects you've worked on in the past, is there a particular character that stuck with you or that you could relate to?
I mean, I think I always try to relate to some aspect of any character that I'm writing, whether it's somebody else's or mine, because it helps you write the story better and connect more. Trying to think of like a favorite. Like I do really like a lot of my own characters. Like I did a series of books for like middle grade, and it's called Stitched, and it's a bunch of little monster kids. And I think the main character is a little Stitch girl named Crimson, and she's made up of different people. And I really just really liked that character because she's struggling to figure out who she is from like a literal and metaphorical point of view, which is a hard thing as a kid, like where you're just like, who am I and what do I, do? So she's kind of got all these pieces, and then she's her own person too. So she's trying to figure those things out. And yeah, I think that's probably for me, like those are the kinds of characters I like, who are trying to figure out who they are and are decent people who make big mistakes sometimes, but come from a place of trying their best. Those are usually the kind of characters that I like. So that kind of goes, there's so many different characters like that over the course of things that I've worked on. So I've been pretty lucky.
That's pretty awesome that you've been so lucky to work with things like you really
Yeah.
can relate to and you like.
Mhm.
So talking about this character, it got me curious. I've not read it yet, but is it just body parts from different people? Like
Yes.
she
Yeah.
doesn't have like the personalities attached as
She has a
well.
personality. It's her, because she's, even though she's been made of separate people, she is now her own complete person. But she doesn't really know who that is. It's like she's basically born again. So she's got pieces of them and memories and different kinds of things, but she's still trying to figure out who her, the new person, really is. And that's kind of the gist of the story, is sort of her figuring that out, and how she interacts with other people and other sort of monster kids that she comes in contact with, and how they're having their own sort of struggles with those things, and how they kind of react to her and what she's doing, and trying to figure out who her mom is, which is another part of the story. So
that's really great. I have a lot of homework then to do this weekend.
well, there's two books, and yeah, no, but it's something that I felt really strongly about, because the character visibly is different people, and she's got scars, on her face and things. So I wanted to have a kid character that wasn't perfect looking, that looked like what she is, that wasn't, and not scary, but still, looked. The artist that I worked with, Aaron Alexovich, she worked on Invader Zim, and yeah, and a bunch of other stuff. So he nailed it. Like, he's just fantastic. So I wrote the story with him in mind. But yeah, there's a bit of a romance that goes on, but it's really just about finding yourself, because at that age, I think the world starts to get pretty big and complicated.
Yes, it
And
is.
you're trying to figure out your place in it. So that was a lot of the story.
That sounds so cool. I asked because I was recently been watching Doom Patrol, and there's this character, Jane, that has 64 personalities within her in what they call the underground. And so I was thinking like since she was made out of other individuals, right? I was like, does she also carry the personalities as well? But
it's more, in her case, more memories than
memories.
Personality. She's her own person, but she will remember who some of the people were and experiences that they had. Yeah, well, I often like to deal with characters who are having some sort of, I guess, what you would call mental health sort of experiences, because I feel like, especially for kids, we don't acknowledge enough that kids have complicated emotions and experiences, and can struggle with mental health stuff just as much as adults, just often differently. So I do like to explore that with characters a lot, because I think it's important for kids to see that it's okay to struggle with those things, and doesn't make you any less, and that it's not uncommon. It's pretty universal.
Correct.
Experience.
And usually at a faster rate too. I remember being a teenage in high school. I still feel I still consider myself around that age. But even in middle grade, I could remember vaguely, but mostly high school, like every couple of weeks or month, it was a different feeling altogether. And I felt like I was in a total different world. So weekly, monthly, sometimes even daily, like my mood and mental health changed constantly.
Oh yeah. Well, it's a whole thing. The experience, you're still growing, hormones are completely nuts. But just like parenting, watching this little person, my daughter's 6, but she makes these huge changes, and suddenly there'll be all of these things she understands that she didn't before, and all kinds of stuff. So it's a pretty interesting, the process of becoming a person is a very interesting thing. So that's something I always find very interesting in my work as well, because I think we're all kind of continuing to do that no matter how old we are. It just happens in different ways as you keep going.
Yeah, I agree totally. And sometimes, like in this title that you mentioned to us, Stitched, There's always in books or any media of storytelling, there's always something that someone can relate to, and that's
Hmm.
what makes work great. Because you connect, right? You connect with the
Yeah,
character, they talk to you in different ways, and in the end, that's what really is important. Besides telling, of course, an awesome story.
that's what I think too.
That's awesome. Um, so you've done such amazing work with stuff that you've worked on in the past. Like, what sort of challenge have you faced as a creative artist, writer, or editor?
Oh, I mean, all the same things I think other people do, you know. I think everything I tackle has some new thing about it that I haven't done before. So there's just sort of practical challenges. You know, I definitely came up in comics during a time when sometimes being a lady in comics was rough. Um, and some of it is just the creative life versus being able to make a living, which I think is always really difficult for people, and finding a balance between those things and modifying your idea of what success means, because it's not really in the arts, it's not really the same as other things, I think. Like, I think if you spend all of your time measuring your success by publishing numbers or money, you'll be a very unhappy person because it's not
Right.
the industry doesn't really work that way, and that's not really, I don't think, why most people create things and want to share a story. So I think, you know, people should feel like that it's important enough that you want to tell the story and you should tell your story, and if that's how you feel, then you should do it and don't let anybody tell you not to, and that the success of that has to come from the process of making it and the things you learn from making it, and not outside factors, because those things are often way outside your control and don't have anything to do with how good the work is or you as a creative person or anything. You know, I've had books do really well, I've had books go, you know, it's not something you can necessarily predict. So it's important to do the best work, you know, that you can, and measure the success of it on that, on what you learned and what you, how you grew through it, what, you know, how it felt to put it out there and share it, and let the other stuff sort of go as much as possible. That for me is a fairly big challenge.
Interesting. Um, so what's in the future for you right now?
A whole bunch of things I can't talk about.
I thought so. I thought, I was like, I'll ask her, but I think
Yeah,
she might not be able
this
to
is
talk
always
about it.
the stinky part of working in this industry, is like you be like in the middle of stuff, but like you can't talk about any of it for a year, and so you're just like,
Oh,
good things. Yeah, I have a couple of really big things actually just starting up now, and they're kind of a big deal. And the only thing I can say is one of them is young adult, and I'm very excited about it. And that's it. But yes, there's a bunch of things that I have to, you know, that I've been putting a lot of time into. And so hopefully in the next year, we'll be able to actually talk about them. But yeah, publishing is such a pain in the butt that way.
yeah, it is.
It's
It
like,
is.
yes, I am, but I can't say what it is. Like,
Well, you guys, you heard that. If you want to know and stay in touch and see what's happening in the future with Mariah McCourt, just make sure that you go to the links that will show in the description of the Facebook post for her Twitter and website as well. I'm not sure. I think we do have the Facebook. We'll also
mhm.
post it if we do. If not,
Yep.
then I'll post it, guys. But yeah, make sure that you just follow Mariah to see that what's happening with her in the future and all the amazing work that she does. So Mariah, before we close today, do you have any message or a message of encouragement to young viewers that might think, I'm too young to do art, or I'm not that good enough,
Oh, yeah.
or they want to starting
Um,
to get into drawing or writing?
yeah. I would say don't really worry so much about the idea of talent in things, and concentrate more on whether you love to do something, and spending time on that and figuring out what your voice is, not somebody else's or somebody else's idea of like what something should look like, but what it is that you need to say and what story you want to tell, whatever it is, doesn't matter. And that it's worth telling, because you want to tell it, and it doesn't have to be something anybody else understands or thinks, you know, is like the right kind of story. There's no such thing. And whatever it is that you want to do that way, I mean, every single human being is creative. So in my opinion, anybody can do art and writing. You just have to, you know, spend time on it. Take the time with it, practice it, do that kind of thing, the least glamorous part of it. But like, if you can get something out of that process, which I guarantee you, you will, you can learn so much just doing these things. um, you'll be able to make the things that you want to make. And that's what I would say is stay true to yourself and the things that you want to say. And it can be hard sometimes, but it's worth it.
Awesome. Yeah, those hit me right there, because I also struggle with being creative and writing and doing other things as well. So that applies to us,
Yep.
big guys, adults, and also young creatives that are watching this today. Well, thank you, Mariah, so much for being with us here today.
Thank you for having me.
I appreciate it so much. It was great talking to you.
Thank you.
Everyone, make sure that if you want to drop by Junkie Clipper today from 1 to 4 p.m., we'll be there with lots of activities for you guys. So make sure you visit us and stay tuned for the next video about Animal Crossing. Take care, everyone. Bye.